Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I am so blessed to get to do the work that I do that doesn't feel at all like work. I offer one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingSouls.com. And when you're visiting me there, if you're not already on my mailing list, I invite you to sign up. There are 2 different opportunities. At the top of my homepage, there is a form for my regular mailing list, and that will bring you all the announcements. And then further down, there is another form where you can sign up for my daily inspiration email blast, and you will receive an inspiring email from me every weekday. So lots of ways that we can connect. I also have a Facebook page of the same name. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you come into a lovely space of rest. As I have shared with you before, this podcast is born of 2 of my favorite forms of self-care, connecting with the angels and listening to sleep podcasts. I had contemplated doing a sleep podcast for quite a while before I actually created this one, because I love them so much. And there are many sleep podcasts out there, but I still found myself searching through for different kinds, and there were only a handful that really spoke to me. And that's when I thought, I'd really like to create one. I think that would be really cool. And it's really turned into something that I love so much. And I know for many of you who listen, that you haven't listened to sleep podcasts before this one. And so if you have found that this podcast is helping you drift off to sleep, I just want to say thank you for giving it a try. What I love to do is when I'm ready to go to bed, I crawl in underneath the covers. I love lots of covers. And I use wired earphones. And I pick an episode to play, and I set the sleep timer, and then I turn the volume down low, lower than I would if I were listening to an audiobook. And then I just allow myself to drift off. There's just something so comforting about hearing a loving, soothing voice, helping to give our waking consciousness a gentle focal point to help us ultimately drift off to sleep. So it's really become a beautiful part of my bedtime routine, and I hope that you find this helpful. As I record this episode, it is early morning. This is always my preferred time to record because the outside world still feels very quiet. And so I share this quiet with you as I look out my window at the trees in my neighbor's backyard. It seems as if they are hardly moving. So there is a stillness to this moment that I gently share with you. I also am feeling very quiet, which is sort of a paradox when it comes to recording an episode. I thought, I don't even know that I have anything to say, which is sort of a prerequisite for recording. this episode. But here I am, and it's okay. Do you ever have those moments when you feel like you have nothing to say? I shared on an earlier episode that I never have anything to say when someone says, "How are you?" And I say, "I'm fine, I'm good." And nothing naturally flows from that place. I know socially, there's sort of a social contract that we fill in the blank. But I find, I don't know if it's that I'm getting older or what it is, but I find it less graceful to fill in those spaces. So I'm glad for story time in this episode. I do have a treat for you. We are going to be flipping through yet another old TV guide. These are some of my favorite episodes to record for you. And so before we get there, let me invite you into this sweet, cozy sanctuary of light. And I'm going to ask the angels to join us. They are already here, but I love the ritual of sharing them with you. So go ahead and cozy on up and snuggle on in. And let's take a few nice deep breaths in and out as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I welcome your beautiful presence. And even as I say these words, I feel you welcoming us into this beautiful, divine light. And angels, I ask that you send blessings of love to each of our beloveds hearing this message. For I know that you are not bound by time nor space, so whenever it is that they hear this message, I know that you are with them. And angels, I ask that you bring to each one of us blessings of love, inspiration, healing, and divine guidance. And angels, may I also ask for a special blessing of ease. And dear ones, just take a big deep breath in on that, and let's breathe in the vibration of ease. Wherever you could use some extra ease in your life, just imagine that the angels are sending soothing, graceful energy to these aspects of your experience. And I'm doing this with you because I have my own places I could use some extra ease these days. So I gratefully and gracefully receive, and I invite you to do the same. And the angels are also bringing you blessings of encouragement. There are prayers that are being said in your name. There is light being streamed to you. So imagine, if you will, that the space you are in is filling with a soft pink light that is filled with love that has been calibrated just for you. And just allow this light to flow to every cell of your body, every thought in your mind, and every emotion in your heart. And there is nothing you need to do to receive this. It simply is here. It simply exists here for you. And this ripple of love can also stream to all of those that you love, to all of those that love you, to any circumstance or situation in your life where you could use some extra clearing. I always love that invitation for clearing. Let's call in the clearing and healing light now. Sending it to any disruption, any imbalance. Just letting this be cleared through the highest realms of light and love. And just allow yourself to receive. You are so very precious in this world. And I am so profoundly grateful to have this time with you. So I think I'm going to keep this first segment a little bit shorter than usual, since I am still feeling rather quiet within myself. But we are going to move into story time. So you, my beautiful friend, you rest well. And your angels will be with you. And together we're going to flip through the pages of a very old TV guide. So this TV guide is another one that I ordered off of eBay. It is from December 5th through the 11th, 1970. So again, another holiday season TV guide. I think the past few issues that I have flipped through were from the holidays, but different years. So in 1970, I was 8 years old, 3rd grade. I don't have a lot of TV memories from this time. As I was flipping through the TV guide, there weren't necessarily as many familiar points as there are in the later years for me, but still some really good stuff. Again, to set the stage, in 1970, we did not have cable TV. We did not have VCRs. In most major markets, there were the 3 major networks, and then there were likely a handful of independent stations and a PBS station. And if you wanted to watch a program, you had to watch it live. And the only way to see it again was if it aired in reruns. So if 2 of your favorite shows were airing opposite of each other, you had to pick which one you wanted to watch. And typically, families watched TV together in the same room. Our family did. We watched in the living room. In 1970, we definitely had a black and white television. We hadn't made the leap to color yet. And we would all sit in the living room together. As kids, the prime position for viewing television was to get the living room couch, to lay on the couch, and to have the black Afghan that my mom had crocheted that was made with granny squares. So probably most of us grew up with a granny square Afghan somewhere in our house. And the one that we had beautiful multicolors in the center, and then it was trimmed with black. So as kids, we'd made up all of these rules that we would say sofa saved, Afghan saved, everything on sofa saved. And if you forgot to say that, one of us other kids could come and then claim the sofa or the Afghan or the pillows. So there was a lot of negotiation that went on to get ready to watch television. I do remember laying on the floor a lot watching TV. As a kid, that was comfortable. I grew up in the Chicago area, so our primetime programming started at 7 p.m. and was over by 10 p.m. I know on either coast, on the West Coast and East Coast of the United States, prime time starts at 8 p.m. and is over by 11. So it took a little bit of an adjustment for me to go to West Coast programming time after having grown up in the Chicago area. And at this age, I would imagine we were likely headed off to bed by 8 o'clock. So maybe we got in 1 hour of primetime watching. The big place what we wanted to watch was Saturday morning cartoons. And as I have shared with you before, I grew up Jewish, and we went to Sabbath school, which took place on Saturdays, which meant that I could not watch the optimal cartoon time of Saturday mornings, and the Sunday morning cartoons were not as good. But my mother would not listen to my rationale for wanting to move over to Sunday school instead of Sabbath school. She simply did not see my brilliance and my rationale for wanting to be able to watch Saturday morning cartoons. It made sense to me at the time. But alas, I had to settle for Sunday cartoons. So on this cover of TV Guide, we have an illustration of talk show host Dick Cavett. And there's a headline that says, Dinner with Julia Child. So both Dick Cavett and Julia Child were featured in this issue. On the inside cover and inside page, there is a 2-page spread from Remington Electronics, because again, this is prime Christmas gift buying time. So you could get, for your lady, you could get Lady Remington steamrollers, which I remember having steamrollers when I used to try to straighten my hair. And for the men, there are different kinds of razors, as well as a Lady Remington for women. And then on the yellow inside first page, where they're talking about TV programming, let's see, Jerry Lewis will be roasted by the Friars Club. Something with Johnny Carson. Abraham Lincoln is going to be the subject of 2 shows. Of course, not starring Abraham Lincoln, because he is long dead by this point, but his life is going to be the subject of some TV programs. There will be some appearance, not on the Abraham Lincoln special, of course, but there's a movie, let's see. Oh, I see. The Harlem Globetrotters are taping a special game for NBC. I'm really bad at reading all of these. I'm glad you might be sleeping. Let's see what else we have. Something about Laugh-In, National Geographic, Bewitched, Hee Haw, something called Animal World, which I would have probably loved because I loved any of those animal specials. Okay, I have to go back to reread this Abraham Lincoln thing because I really messed that up. So it says, Abraham Lincoln is the subject of 2 shows scheduled by NBC. One is called They've Killed the President. It's a documentary featuring Joseph Leach, who bears a startling resemblance to Lincoln. And then Dennis Weaver plays Lincoln in a TV movie called The Great Man's Whiskers, which is a very odd name. And then the next line, they say, basketball court jesters, the Harlem Globetrotters, are taping a game. That's why I got that all mushed up. So now that we've cleared that up. There also is an ad for AT&T, or one of the Bell companies. And it talks about mom. Right? Remember, she piled so many clothes on you that you couldn't move. She always made you eat that extra spoonful for good measure. So why not call her? Long distance is the next best thing to being there. That used to be the tagline. How many of you remember that? The next best thing to being there. Back when long distance was a really special treat. So in 1970, it looks like the cassette player was a big thing back then. It must have been relatively new. We have an ad for the Capitol Stereo Tape Club, and if you join, you're going to get your own beautiful portable cassette player, a value of $29.95. I have no idea what that's worth in today's dollars, but probably a lot. And some of the cassettes you can choose from, Steve Miller Band Blues is out there, Nat King Cole, Merle Haggard, Dean Martin, The Letterman, Herbie Hancock, Engelbert Humperdinck. So at 8 years old, none of this would have appealed to me because I was about to get ready to be madly in love with Bobby Sherman. And then there is a 2-page spread, an ad that just delights me and brings back so many memories. It is for the Kodak Instamatic camera. So flash pictures without flash batteries. They had the little cube flash bulbs that turned around. You could get 4 pictures out of one bulb. So, bright new gifts. They work like magic with magic cubes instead of flash batteries. So there are 4 different models. The new X15, just drop in the film. Indoors or after dark, pop on a magic cube and flash away. That one is $21. There's one for $31, one for $48, and let's read the most expensive one. The new X45 combines all of these features: electric eye, automatic film, and magic cube advance, easy close-up setting, sharp f8 lens, less than $58. And the most automatic, not shown, is the X90, less than $145, which was a lot of money back then. What I remember about these cameras is the cubes would get so hot, because at some point, if you've taken your 4 photos, you'd have to pull it out and put in another one, and it was always really hot. Not terribly efficient, but it's the best that we had at the time. I mean, anyone born after 1990 would be shocked to know at what a big deal it was to be able to take photographs back then. You know, you'd have the roll of film, you'd have to drop it in, you'd have to get it developed, you'd have to have flash bulbs. There would be that expanse of time between when you actually took the picture and when you ultimately got them developed, and you wouldn't know how the pictures would turn out until then. And we all would have those mystery film cartridges, and we would have no idea what was on them, and then you would have to debate whether or not it was worth spending money to get it developed or not. So all of those things definitely are in the past now. We can take so many pictures and not even think about it. It's so cool. Okay, and you know what they're reviewing is the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So it looks like in 1970, both the Mary Tyler Moore Show and The Odd Couple both premiered. And this is a very positive review for the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So they really liked it. They write, but the show really goes into high gear at Mary's job, for there is not only good satire, but riotously good fun. There was just a great documentary on HBO, which I guess is now called Max, all about Mary Tyler Moore. And it's fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, I totally recommend it. And then there is an ad for RCA AccuColor televisions. It's actually not an ad for TVs, but it's advertising the age of AccuColor. So color television was now being marketed to the masses. It would be many years before we had a color TV. But it says AccuColor, RCA's new system for color television. Model for model, dollar for dollar, the most vivid, most lifelike, most consistently accurate, most dependable color in our history and our most automatic. I definitely coveted my friends' color televisions. It was such a weird thing to go from watching a program in black and white to then seeing it in color. I specifically remember the Partridge Family because they had that very groovy painted bust. And it was a strange thing to go from black and white to color in terms of my memories. For instance, in my mind, the Partridge Family bus I always see in very muted tones because I first started watching that program in black and white. And I remember when I first would see photographs or the show in color that it wouldn't look right to me. As a matter of fact, I just looked up the bus because I thought it was in shades of gold and brown. And it actually is in primary colors of yellow, red, blue, and white. So that's just an example on how growing up, certain programs don't live in color in my memory bank, because during my prime viewing years, it was black and white. So there you go. So let's start off with Saturday morning, the programs that I would likely not be watching, that I don't know that I even remember, but Heckle and Jekyll, which for some reason I seem to remember, Woody Woodpecker, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, classics, right? Motor Mouse, I don't remember that. Dr. Dolittle, I'm sure I watched some form of that. Josie and the Pussycats, for sure I watched that. Harlem Globetrotters, who I loved. Puffin' Stuff, which I remember as HR Puffin' Stuff. And I don't know if it ever got rebranded to Puffin' Stuff, but I remember it as HR Puffin' Stuff. And in case you're wondering what this episode is about, Witchy Poo, greatest name ever, Witchy Poo plots an evil deed to honor Boss Witch's visit. See, I wouldn't have been able to watch that because I was at Sabbath school. This was so much more important. And then, alas, by the time I would get home, cartoons would be over, and we would move on to things like Bandstand, aka American Bandstand, which I never really cared much about. So the guests on this one include the Carpenters, who will be singing We've Only Just Begun, fantastic song, and Bobby V, who I don't know. Opposite that is an episode of The Monkees. Peter's having a devil of a time. He's traded his soul for a harp. And for those of you who don't know, later in life, I would work for Michael Nesmith, who was in The Monkees as Mike, the one in the ski cap. So just a little Laurel trivia there for you. Of course, there's sports on. On this particular Saturday, the Chicago Bears were playing the Vikings, a great rivalry for sports teams, and I was 8, so I would not have cared, but I promise you my parents were watching. For sure my dad was watching that. And since we just had the one television in the living room, I was likely reading a book, because I loved reading at that age. There's also lots of bad movies. Falcon of the Desert from 1965, an operatic plot featuring a daring horseman, a kidnapped bride, and hordes of battling tribesmen. That sounds perfectly awful. There is The Wide World of Sports, also on Saturdays, and I always was hoping for gymnastics for Wide World of Sports because that's all I really cared about. but they're doing the Tournament of Thrills Auto Crash Championship. I wouldn't have cared. Some skiing. I don't know. Maybe that would have been on. But there is a Gilligan's Island rerun on a Saturday evening that I probably would have wanted to watch. But you know what is on this particular Saturday night? For sure we would have been watching A Charlie Brown Christmas. I love that. Charlie Brown Christmas. We have to watch it every year. Wes loves that. And I love the song. So that would have been on. And for sure we would have watched that. Opposite that is Andy Williams. And for sure the Charlie Brown Christmas special would have won out. So they write, Happiness is this award-winning cartoon telecast for the 6th time. And the cool thing was you could only watch it once a year at Christmas. You didn't have the videotape that you could watch endlessly. So we would build a beautiful relationship with these programs. Oh, jazz pianist Vince Guaraldi plays the background music, including his Christmas Time is Here. Such a great song. And then, I don't know what this is. It's called Homewood, but it sounds really cool. It's Leon Russell and Friends, an hour of rock music led by Leon Russell, who has played with the Beatles, Joe Cocker, and Delaney and Bonnie. So he's going to be joined by blues singer-guitarist Furry Lewis, saxophonist Jim Horn. I don't know any of these people. Okay, well, we wouldn't have been watching that. Oh, because, you know what came after A Charlie Brown Christmas? Frosty the Snowman, which I think I read about in another episode. But once again, Jimmy Durante narrates the animated adventures of the snowman who came to life one day. And listen, you may not know this unless you have been listening to all of my episodes, but my cousin, Joe Bleadon, my cousin Susie's dad, was Jimmy Durante's publicist. So I feel a great affinity for Jimmy Durante. And perhaps my cousin Joe at this point was working with Jimmy. I don't know. Also airing on Saturday night is Adam 12, Lawrence Welk, and My Three Sons. I don't know what we would have watched. We never watched Lawrence Welk. I don't remember Adam 12. Perhaps we were watching My Three Sons because that was rather benign. A few domestic mishaps give Polly a bad case of wifely inadequacy, Chip's suffering with a stomach ache, and a wardrobe full of over-ironed shirts. I don't remember that episode at all, but I'm sure I have seen it at some point. There is a sitcom that I sort of remember called Arnie that's on Saturday night. Ogilvy warns Majors against taking Arnie to San Francisco for an important sales meeting, and Arnie is played by Herschel Bernardi. I don't know why I remember that, but here we go. We've got Mary Tyler Moore. Let's see if we remember this episode. A Humpty Dumpty crisis develops at WJM. News anchorman Ted Baxter, who can't utter a word that isn't written for him, goes to pieces at a speaking engagement. Mary must get him back together again to save the 6 o'clock news. I don't know that I specifically remember that episode, but it sounds like just about every episode I've ever seen, and I'm sure we were watching it. Oh, but you know what was airing that Saturday night? And I don't know if we would have gotten special dispensation to stay up late. Miss Teenage America. Now, say what you will about beauty pageants now, but I can assure you, as an 8-year-old girl in 1970, beauty pageants were a big deal. We loved them, and of course we were always rooting for Miss Illinois to win something. So this is Miss Teenage America that I don't know we would have cared as much about, but we would have certainly asked for permission to stay up late to watch it. Okay, so let's go on to Sunday. I'm going to skip through the daytime on Sunday because nothing good's on. There is a special movie on tonight, on this Sunday night, called The Littlest Angel. The happiest, heavenliest musical ever. It's a Hallmark Hall of Fame special. And if you know, the Hallmark Hall of Fame specials were always a big deal back in the day. And this stars Johnny Whitaker, who was, I think, Jody on Family Affair, and Fred Gwynne, of course, Herman Munster. And it's a musical? Well, that had to be genius. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, here's what it says. The Littlest Angel, an ideal family attraction. One critic's opinion of this musical adaptation of Charles Tazewell's Christmas Tale. Johnny Whitaker of Family Affair, yay, extra points for me for knowing that, stars as Michael, the young shepherd boy for whom heaven is anything but paradise. His celestial robe has no pockets, he can't fly, and most crucial, he doesn't have his treasured box. So there's original songs, and Fred Gwynne plays Patience, E.G. Marshall plays God, Gabriel is played by Cab Calloway, Democritus played by Tony Randall, Flying Mistress is Connie Stevens. Okay, that would have been genius at the time. I don't remember it at all, but it's certainly the kind of thing I would have watched. Also, Hogan's Heroes. I've watched many an episode of Hogan's Heroes, and I shake my head at it these days. Yeah, I can't do it. Kukla, Fran, and Ollie is on, which I remember watching, but I don't have any clear memories of. Beulah the Witch tries being a Christmas sales lady. Ed Sullivan. We for sure would have watched Ed Sullivan, I'm sure, if we were not watching the Hallmark Hall of Fame. And guests this week include Joey Heatherton, dancer choreographer Peter Gennaro, comics Scoey Mitchell and Pat Cooper. I don't know any of these people. And then later in the evening, there is a special with Dick Van Dyke and Bill Cosby. There's also a movie called Circus World and The Glenn Campbell Show. Also, it looks like Tim Conway has his own show. His guests include Dorothy Lamour, Mickey Rooney, and singer Bobby Bloom. I didn't know he had his own show. So let's flip on over to Monday afternoon. I was not watching soap operas at that age, so I would have had to settle for reruns of things like Gomer Pyle, Petticoat Junction, I Love Lucy, The Galloping Gourmet is on. I never really watched that, but I do remember him. Mr. Rogers is on, but I would be too old for that at this time. Gilligan's Island, for sure, I would have been I watched many a Gilligan's Island episode. So comedian Phil Silvers guest stars as a movie producer, Harold Hecuba, whose plane has crashed near the island. Also airing is Star Trek. Well, that's interesting. Star Trek was already in syndication in 1970. And Sesame Street. So what I remember is Sesame Street came out by the time I could already read. And so I thought it was for babies, and I would not watch it. So I did not grow up watching Sesame Street. I just missed it by a few years. But in this episode, number 151, Big Bird counts eggs for Mr. Hooper, rhyming words, and Oscar uses a machine to write a poem, and then sorting household items. So, also airing Flintstones. I'm sure that's what I was watching. I'm sure I've seen every Flintstones episode 1,000 times. Get Smart, of course, would watch that. As we get into the later hours of programming, there is Red Skelton, who I loved. I loved his variety show. That was something we watched. In this one, Michael Landon of Bonanza is the richest boy in the world in a sketch with Skelton as conman San Fernando. In another sketch, Red is an old man who hates kids. And it looks like Billy Barty is also in this particular episode. By this point, it looks like Lucille Ball is starring in Here's Lucy. So as a TV stunt, Art Linkletter promises Lucy $500 if she can go 24 hours without losing her temper. Art doesn't mention that family and friends are in on the gag, doing their irritating best to be provocative. I'm sure I've seen that. I don't have any memories of it. And then there's a Bob Hope special, which I think I've watched, but not willingly. So Bob's guests include Jack Benny, Engelbert Humperdinck, Dorothy Lamour, Elkie Summer, and members of the Look All-American football team. I don't know. We might have watched that, but I wouldn't have cared. Also airing is Doris Day. I do remember watching that show. So to bring romance back into her marriage, Angie Pelusi agrees to Doris's plan, a complete overhaul to boost Angie's sex appeal. We used to talk about things like sex appeal, although I was 8 years old, so I did not, but I just remember that term. There's a Johnny Carson special, which doesn't look very compelling to me even now. Oh, Carol Burnett. Yes, we loved Carol Burnett. Don Rickles and Mel Torme join in a kicky adult version of Sesame Street with cameos by Lucille Ball, Cass Elliot, Ricardo Montalban, Dean Martin, Jim Nabors, and Dick Martin. Well, that sounds really good. I have no idea if we watched that, but that certainly sounds like something that would have been on in our home. And now we have one of those iconic cardboard inserts for the Capitol Record Club. 12 records for just $1.87. And your first selection is free when you agree to buy only 12 more albums during the next 12 months. These inserts were always so enticing, but at 8 years old, I didn't recognize most of this music, so this would not have been of interest to me. There's an ad here for the Mike Douglas show, and I don't know if all of them are going to be on one show, but there's Sonny and Cher, Mama Cass, and Liza Minnelli. So, a fantastic lineup this week on Mike Douglas. And then as we get later into the evening, we've got a wildlife special. I always loved the wildlife specials. This is about the beaver, and it is narrated by Henry Fonda. Opposite that is Mod Squad, which we did not watch. I don't think it was my parents' thing, and I think at that age I wasn't terribly interested. But you know, it is on the Beverly Hillbillies. Of course we watched that. I don't think my parents wanted to watch it, but as kids we loved it. So in this episode, Granny cooks up a surefire scheme to end Ellie's romance with frogman Mark Templeton, while over at the bank, Drysdale plots anew to keep the Clampett millions in his vault. Followed by Green Acres, a brilliant programming block, Beverly Hillbillies, and the Green Acres. The High Cost of Loving finds Ebb enrolled in a correspondence course so he can learn a lucrative trade and marry his sweetheart. Also on is Julia, which I remember watching. How does a little boy get a color TV set? One way is to enter an essay contest and a very secretive Corey does just that. I could really relate to that. I wanted a color TV set too. There is an episode of Hee Haw on, which we would not have watched. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else here that we would have been interested in. Not really. I was probably asleep by this point too, so we'll keep going. We have wandered our way to Wednesday evening. So there is a Julia Child program on, and also a Gene Kelly special. We would have been watching that. My mom loved Gene Kelly. So second edition of Changing Scene, a fast-moving variety hour spotlighting Gene Kelly, Liv Marvin, Barbara Eden, Marty Allen. We would have probably been watching that. Variety shows were a big deal back then. And I'm going to skip us on over to Thursday evening because Family Affair is on, which I loved. So Bill tries to revive the twins' fading image of their parents by taking them on a sentimental journey back home to Indiana. I used to love Family Affair. Also, the show Ironside is on a little bit later, and Bewitched. I loved Bewitched. So, thanks to Endora, Samantha's now sharing all feelings with swinging cousins Serena, a situation that has Darren totally confused. And I have shared with you before my rant about Bewitched. Here she is, an incredibly powerful witch who cannot be trusted with her magic. So her husband has to rein her in. A terrible metaphor. But it was the 70s. That was life back then. And then later that evening, Odd Couple, which was brand new. So Felix is alive and well and snowbound in Canada, but sinister meanings are drawn from his absence. Oscar never found Felix's explanatory note. And there's this, okay, it gets, it's not really dark, but it's not bedtime worthy, so I'm not going to read that. There's some hijinks that ensues. We'll just say that. And then we'll move on to Friday because the Brady Bunch is on. The Bradys try to help Bobby overcome his fear of high places after he falls out of a tree. And what I'll always remember about the Brady Bunch is I'm the same age as Cindy Brady. So however old Cindy Brady is in the episode, that's how old I was at the time. We're the same age. Also, Nanny and the Professor is on. Oh my gosh, I remember that show. My Son the Sitter. Nanny overcomes the professor's objections to having 12-year-old Hal babysit for his brother and sister. Also on is That Girl. I remember watching that. It looks like there's an Elvis Presley movie on, Easy Come, Easy Go. I don't remember watching a lot of Elvis. Ooh, and Love American Style. I don't think we got to watch that because there were all these double entendres. A very sexy show. But on this one, Dodo, played by Naomi Lewis, is so understanding about her philandering husband, played by Jim Backus, that she drives her friends right up the wall. I don't know. I don't know that we would have watched that. I know when I was older I watched Love American Style, though. And I could sing you the whole theme song right now, but I will not do that to you. But feel free if you want to go ahead and sing it. I totally understand. And then as we wrap up this week's TV Guide, how about if we do a little bit of the TV Guide crossword puzzle together? I don't know that I'm going to know many of these because it's been so long. So the first is long steps, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, I think 8 letters if I count. No, I'd say 7 letters. Easy for me. So long steps, it would be strides. I just know that one. And then one down is the Forsyth blank. and the first letter's S. So it's the Forsyth Saga. I don't remember what that is. I just remember the name. Number 8 across is belonging to Mr. Neighbors. I'm assuming they're talking about Jim Neighbors, so that would be Jim's. 16 across is book by Jane Austen. It's only 4 letters, so that must be Emma. Mr. Graves must be Peter Graves. Marlowe's father, it must be Marlowe Thomas, which means her father is Danny Thomas. At 61 years old, I can't get over about how much weird information is stored in my memory. Let's see, five down. So Mr. Knotts would be Don Knotts. I know that one. Yay. Actress Connie, and if this is 1970, this would be Connie Francis, I'm pretty sure. So we would do pretty good on this TV guide. Crossword puzzle. And then one of the ads towards the end of the issue is for an electric watch. And it says nobody ever gave her an electric watch before. The electric Timex never needs winding because there's nothing to wind. So if there's other things on her mind, winding her watch is one thing she can forget about. I don't know why that makes me laugh. Like, she's so harried. She cannot remember to wind her watch. A replaceable energy cell powers this watch with steady electric accuracy for a whole year. Fantastic? We think she'll think so. It never needs winding. $50. If she has other things on her mind, this will not have to be one of them. That's just crazy. And that brings us to the end of this particular TV guide. I made it through a whole issue in one episode, but I think it's indicative of it being 1970 and there just wasn't a lot on. So I do have an issue coming from eBay that I think is the late 50s. So we'll see. We'll see how those go too. But I do enjoy making these episodes for you, so I hope that you're enjoying yourself and perhaps you've drifted off to sleep. So I send you beautiful waves of love. I wish you the sweetest of dreams. And I look forward to connecting again soon. Thank you.